So, my name is Adam Bien. I'm from Germany. Usually, what I did, I show you here at conference, usually some Java backend or microservices. And what happened in the last 2 years, my clients ask me, everything is nice in the backend, but what should we do in the front end? So what is the migration strategies? And lots of the companies have, for instance, Angular JS deployed. So the Angular is the very first Angular version. And they ask, what shall we do? Should we migrate to Angular? It's just without JS. It's the new 4, 5, or 6, or Vue, or React, or Ember. And what I usually talk about the last years was, don't start with a framework. Start without framework, and then see what happens. And what happened in some projects, developers really liked the way without any frameworks. Particularly Java developers, which was astonishing. So the JavaScript, the new JavaScript, looks actually like Java. The longer we wait, the longer it looks like Java. It is, you can learn it incredibly fast. And this is so similar that they have some problems, switching between Java and JavaScript back and forth, because the syntax is even so similar. And the point is, you will have to know the web standards anyway if you have, to write serious Angular, React, or whatever applications. And the trend is actually leaving frameworks and go just with almost bare metal. And most of the frameworks are more or less syntactic sugar around web components. Even the newest Angular elements trust to deliver custom elements. And this is what happens in the community. So the idea is, why not to start with frameworks and web components first, and then see what happens. We have more time. Just please ask questions. So usually I get lots of questions. Some of the attendees or developers are not satisfied with my opinion. And the cool story is I have way more resolution than on the text stage. On the text stage, I was completely confused because it was 720 pixels. I wanted to show actually some responsive stuff, which is impossible on too small screen. Okay. Stupid slides. Yeah, now they work. So I have still enjoyed Java, and I have to say I really enjoy JavaScript and switching back and forth. What I use, I only use the newest JavaScript called ES6, or actually ECMAScript 2015, and 2017 is too early. But with ES6, whatever I show you today should run on all browsers. This is the cool story, without any transpilation. So, and what's also cool, I usually work for enterprise companies. And what happened in the last 2 years as well, browsers like Firefox and Chrome became the official browsers in addition to Internet Explorer. So in most of the projects, we can even say, just go with Chrome or just go with Firefox. And the cool story is there is no build involved. So the JavaScript build, like, I don't know whether you know your NPM stuff and Webpack and all the stuff. We don't use it. It was also a funny thing. Client hired me to develop an PWA app, a small one, and then were disappointed that there was no Jenkins build step. To build all the stuff. It's like, there is no build. I just have JavaScript, and they actually hoped I would create something on Jenkins because they had no idea how to work with NPM. And yeah. So if you have questions, ask. So, and this is actually my world. I build web standards in the front end, Java EE, microprofile, whatever in the back end. I get lots of the question why I'm not using Spring Boot, and the answer is whatever I do is Java EE. Everyone demands from me Java EE, and this is the only reason. And Spring Boot and Java EE are very similar, so you could do probably the same with Spring Boot if you like Spring Boot. For me, no difference. And what happened is since last year, now we have Jakarta EE. And Jakarta EE is like the open source movement of Java EE, and everyone contributes. So there are Pivotal from Spring are contributors, even Microsoft is contributor. It seems like we have full new Java EE stack, which becomes far more popular what Java EE is right now. And the Jakarta E8 will come this year when I have no idea, but the first edition will be very similar to the Java 8 edition. Okay? So very good news to Java land, except this is still boring. Everything is solved. We have to focus on business logic. This is the only problem we have. And even better on JavaScript for all the Java developers. Why? Because JavaScript becomes more and more similar to Java, which is very good news to me. I mean, I don't have to learn, the old, this, that, function, modules, and scopes. Everything is gone. Cool? Questions? No questions? First? No? Okay. I have a blog and stuff like this. Yeah, land once, never migrate. This is actually my survival strategy, otherwise I would be crazy. I stick with Java from the beginning, with Java from the beginning, and I didn't have to relearn a lot because it remained the same for the last 20 years. And great news, I know other consultants which learn every week another programming language, and I guess at the end of the day, they forget everything. Because I don't think it is possible to know more than 2 or 3 programming languages at the same time well. You know all the problems, all the challenges, and problems in production. And if you learn 2 things, JavaScript is number 1. Java, if you like C or Go or something like this, you are set. You don't have to relearn everything over and over again. I know for consultants it's a problem because it doesn't generate a lot of business. In Java and JavaScript, you are one of the many. If I would introduce a very exotic programming language, then we get better contracts from the clients because they will always come back to you to learn language like Mu, or there is a brainfuck. It is recorded, but this is a true name of the language. If you go to, this was just kidding. It could be Scala, whatever, right? So, some online courses if you're interested, and this is so this was commercial, but you can rent them for 10 euros. But this is actually more interesting. If you have any questions left, first Monday of the month is live streaming, and I answer all the questions for free. You don't have to register, and yeah, this is the deal. Some workshops in Munich, and one could be interesting: how to migrate from Swing to WebStandards. That's the most requested question. Because, for instance, Oracle deprecated the Oracle plugin, web plugin for Swing, and I got lots of questions what do you do right now. And this is some of my project, we do exactly this. This is the end of slides, and this is the end of the presentation from theory. Last week, Marcin, is he here, Marcin? This one, but this one, you are the Marcin? No. And he said, talk is cheap, show me the code. Linus Torvalds, and this is what Adam usually does. I hope this is what I'm doing. Okay. What I would like to show right now, to start with front-end, because back-end is already set. I mean, it will work and it's lightweight and whatever. But we did primates on the text stage. Do we have in Gdańsk something else? What we could do, I saw you have attendee counter, for instance, right? UI. So attendee counter UI, someone checked your badge. Let's start with that. And this is just a shell script. We just copy 3 files to a folder. Nothing happens behind the scenes, so there's no magic. So you just copy, 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 and I do it a lot. What you should use is Visual Studio Code. It's really nice editor for JavaScript, or WebStorm is other one, is very good. I wouldn't suggest to use something like Eclipse for JavaScript, right? So, but this is already great editor. So Visual Studio Code, completely free. WebStorm, not exactly free, but very good. And NetBeans, great. The problem is, right now, NetBeans doesn't support web components or custom elements, so it doesn't know so this is a little bit annoying because you get lots of warnings. Okay? So what I did, I just created a simple app with no CSS and 1 JavaScript, and this JavaScript is included here. We have 1 tag and some header, so nothing specifically happened. And what I would like to do is to run browser sync. And browser sync, I showed it on stage, but didn't explain it well. This is the only tool I usually use. If you browser sync IO, it is like binary, which watches local changes and refreshes the browser. And the browser sync is usually included in all the CLIs, Angular CLIs or whatever, is a part of the development experience. And I only use this. And I propose it to several projects, and developers really like it. So therefore, I show it for you. If you don't like browser sync, not a big deal. You can go to browser and just click refresh button 10 times. So it's actually the same. You should at least ask 1 question. Otherwise, I will be completely confused. It's like, what's wrong with you? All coders and no one asks question. So we have this. And then I will launch this browser sync. And what I did, I created an alias. And what this alias does, it just launches the browser sync. This is the actual command. And it watches the source folder, opens Google, and I don't like to see any notifications. So this is the full configuration of the browser sync tool. Okay? So if I do the bsync, it should open Chrome on port 3000. So I just make it full screen, which was not possible on the text stage because I had 720p. This is like the full screen is, this is like on Apple Watch. This will be the full screen for me. So we have this. And so what we should see is in console, hello web standards, what we see. So, but what I wanted to show today, but I couldn't because of the resolution, what I would like to show is layout, the first thing. So we have main. And by the way, Visual Studio Code and WebStorm have a great plugin called Emmet, Emmet.io. And what it does is, what I could do is, just delete this first. So I could actually say, I would like to have a main, and then a section, and nav, and let's say footer, and then it creates this, and section say content, nav is, let's say, unordered list with list items 3 times, first, second, next, and then footer is by. So, and this is how this Emmet.io, this is only plugin I use for NetBeans. So, and it comes out of the box with WebStorm and Visual Studio Code. And there is a great cheat sheet at Emmet.io. So we'll see all the, so Emmet.io, this is what I'm talking about, completely free. So if you start with JavaScript, learn a few shortcuts, are a lot faster. Cool. So what I did is a little bit of semantic markup, main, section, nav, footer, main. Now go to style. What I could do right now, I can say, okay, cool, main. So I would like to style the main, display, grid. And grid is a new layout which kills all the grids frameworks like Bootstrap and Foundation or whatever. And what I can say, we have a thing section, and I will say, okay, this is background, and I always lose the light version because it looks nicer. Section, we had nav, and this was background light something, and footer. And this was background light, what is nice, green. And you see my developer skills are great, so it looks nice. And then I can say height 100 viewport height, and it is full screen, which is already nice. And I can go here, we have nav, footer, section. I think it is good enough, but now we have no time, so I will just do a shortcut. So the end of the story is what we do in projects actually is we do the following. I name the sections. I would say, and in the workshop, I will name it section. In projects, I name it like, you know, header, navigation area, something more meaningful. I would just call it like the tag because it is easier to remember. I have to, you know, we have just 35 minutes and no time for debugging. So this would be the section. And grid area. The name with the nav, and grid area, and the name is footer. So nothing works anymore, which is normal, but because I can say now grid template areas, and now the fun starts. Now I can say this is section, then we have nav, and then we have footer and footer. And it looks like this. But what I could do, I can say, this is no more true. I have nav, and now it looks like this. Or I can say it should be actually section. So it will look like this. And what we get out of the box fluent layout. Who knows Swing? JavaFX. So we have the old layout managers 20 years ago in web right now. Grid back layout, grid back constraints. You are now, you know, the web guru. Because everyone would say, so grid, this is a grid, CSS grid is complicated. For us Java developers, now it's, you know, we have to just remember what we learned 20 years ago. So we have this. The cool story is, what about, you know, it doesn't look like? What I could say is grid template columns, exactly. And I can say the first column should have, let's say, 80 fraction units, and the next one 20 fraction units. And a fraction units is better than percents because you don't have to count. And as you can see, 20, 80, done. Then I would like have a little bit of gap. So gap, let's say, a half of the size. Oh, this is wrong size. And you see we have a little bit of gap. So the cool story is completely responsive. I use fraction unit, no pixels, and font size. Now I can say, let's adapt the interface to a device. So make it responsive. How to do this? So I wanted to show it on stage, but I gave it up because of the resolution. So what we could do, actually, we could say add media screen, and this is what I also screw up because I forgot the syntax. I think max width, let's say 800 pixels. Just try this. Just do it full, and then the first time I remembered actually the syntax, I always confuse the last part. Because I don't have to do it a lot in projects. You do it once for the whole project, and then it's set. And I define so-called breakpoints, min. So, and now, if I switch to design, you see this is the first media query, and this is the second. This is the breakpoint. And what I could actually do, I can say max width, this is min is minimum, so I can say minimum width is 800, then I can do actually the trick with nav here. Nav here, and as you can see, now it automatically adapts to my screen. With nothing, no frameworks, nothing. The cool story is, what I showed you right now, it will never ever disappear from the browser. You learn it once, and never again, because browsers are browsers. If you learn your CSS grid, 9960 grid, or Bootstrap, it changes all the time. And my clients are actually no more interested in migrations. So and this is why I do a lot of JavaScript right now, because they say, OK, who is interested not to relearn every 3 weeks or 3 months a new framework? It is exciting the very first time. The next framework, I'm absolutely not interested. Yes?
What about browser support?
Very good. Very good question. What about browser support? My friend, you have 2 friends as a JavaScript developer. DevDocs.io is like offline JavaDoc. So you can search for all the APIs. It's like Dash, but in browser is offline, so it even works in the airplane. And the next one is Can I Use? And Can I Use has statistics in which browser a feature is available. And what I showed you right now is this grid layout, CSS grid layout. As you can see, all browsers, but not Opera Mini. And who cares about Opera Mini? Because it is rendered on server, and no enterprise asked me about Opera Mini. So what it actually means is very usable. But only this would be sufficient to know for 70% of small use case in enterprise. Actually, my clients are delighted that they can delete, all the build system just for the thing. So the next one is, usually my clients, they don't have light blue. They have something like company blue or company red, something like this, right? So what you could do, actually, you can say, I would like to define a Infoshare red, and this is red. And then I can say here, for instance, light coral is var Infoshare red, and otherwise blue. And if we switch to here, you see this is now red. And now in one time, I can just say this should be light blue. And then this is light blue, and it should be just, I don't know, yeah, something like this. So, and what it means is, you have variables right now. This is CSS variables. You can define them once and reuse everywhere, and this kills less and Sass. So this is actually the main use case, why my clients use less and Sass, and we use this, and we kill other frameworks. So really, what we have, no kidding, we have in the backend war, which is about 200 kilobytes, and in the front end, a Vue JavaScript, probably 50K. Yes? Not as well as CSS Grid, but what you do if something does not work, then don't search for a framework, search for polyfill. And this is a polyfill called post CSS or next CSS. Let's see. I think this is this. Wait a second. Either this or next CSS. I always confuse both as well. CSS next. Yeah. And what this is, you can use, this is a preprocessor, but it supports the future syntax right now and generates CSS for browsers which do not support the standard. But the cool story is, in one point of time, if the browser will support this, you just delete this. So what we do is not like we introduce frameworks at the beginning. We go with standards first, then use polyfills, and wait until the browser dies off, so our application becomes more and more standardized over time and leaner over time. And this approach I've worked for years with Java EE, works perfectly, except we have crazy architects, of course, but in usual developers who care about business logic, it works, and developers who care about DAOs and DTOs and whatever they build, you always will lose with that. But in the front end, it's the same approach, okay? And this is called CSS properties, and we also use it for skinning of web components. If you have provided, some colors and stuff like this for web components. So we are pretty far, actually. So it's a pity that I had so bad resolution today morning, but better for you. Any other questions? No questions. So then, what you already saw is we actually have classes. So we can use here class counter view with inheritance and whatever we like with a construct, what is it? Constructor, and with brackets. And I have to instantiate that. What you could do, what most of the frameworks are also doing, I actually can say document view is this, and this is available like a singleton everywhere. So this is up to you. And of course, what we have imports. Just do type equals module. This is available in Mozilla and is available in Mozilla Chrome and Edge partially, but they are working like crazy on this. Microsoft is behind this. The problem only they have refactored the internal DOM engine or whatever, and this will take a little bit. So what you can do, we have actually a build for all the browsers. So we have, there is a no module tag. And the no module tag means if the browser does not support modules, it will load the old stuff. So, and we have no module with no crazy old JavaScript, and the new browsers have just this. So this is the only differentiation we have. In some internet projects, in intranet, no distinction. Okay, any questions? No questions. So then I can actually say we have a counter.js, and this is class export default is like in Java, we can counter, and we can have a method called, let's say, count, and it just counts or does something. And of course, we have methods in JavaScript, and we can say here console log counter invoked, and what I forgot is class. For unknown reasons, class. And then I can import that. And because this is default, it looks like Java, I can say import counter without the default. I will have to use the curly braces from, and then the path to the file. And the path to the file is counter.js. And, oh, I don't know why I always do this. So save. So we have that. And now imagine we would like to write something to the section. We would override the section here. So what I could do is I can say now this section equals document query selector, which is pretty powerful, supported in all browsers, and say section. And what is available, we have a cool syntax called inner HTML with backticks. We have multi-line templates, and the multi-line templates we can in JavaScript say within the section we have a div. And within the div, we have like, hey Joe. So, and now it is already appeared there, and within the main, we should have the section, and within the section we have hey Joe, but the cool story is, if we had here, for instance, the counter variable, which is of course 42, then I could actually interpolate that out of the box with this counter, and it should display 42. So what is built in is is the template syntax. And now the good news, what Google did, the new YouTube is built on web components. And there is a new templating language called lit-HTML. And this lit-HTML, so what happens behind the scenes, the literal strings, is the backticks. And built-in JavaScript function is invoked. It passes the array with the strings and interpolates them. But you could create your own function. And this is what Google did. And then we have a prefix HTML. The cool story is, if I, oh, this is a bad story. But if I prepend here HTML, you see what happens. This happened by Microsoft, HTML. So with that, I get syntax highlighting within the template and control space support. And what is lacking right now, I will have to download a script from Google. It's called lit-HTML, 400 lines of code. And then it will look like React. So I can invoke functions. I have support for fetches, for promises in the template. The cool story is, what happened is, what per accident, I guess, what turned out is, the virtual DOM from React and Angular is nice, but not very efficient. It consumes way too much memory. And with that, they find out with ES6 templates, there's just a standard, and it's as fast as a virtual DOM without virtual DOM and completely built on JavaScript standards. Okay, this is what we do in newer projects. Any questions? Just to give you an idea what can happen. I have no time to cover everything, but I would show you what actually happens behind the scenes. So another cool story, I saw, RxJS and reactive programming in JavaScript, but what is already built in? So the cool story is, watch this. So if I define here a function, and let's say the function, I call it fetch or load counter. So and this takes counter, return 42. So if we invoke that, so if I go here and now I have to say document view dot load counter and const result and just what happened, result. So if you look at that, we will see HTML is not defined, it's true. So 42, but if I say async, it is promise. So only if you prepend async, it automatically wraps the result as a promise. It becomes asynchronous, it does not block anymore. And the cool story is, if I use here async, I can use await inside. And with the await inside, I can invoke, for instance, fetch with the backend, which we will do in a second. We have now we should switch to the backend. And then it becomes really easy to program asynchronous stuff. And what I do developers, I show them this first before I force them to deal with RxJS or any reactive framework just to call a backend. Because this fetch I'm showing you right now, so DevDocs isn't, sorry, can I use this is what I actually wanted to show you. Fetch, this is supported everywhere except Internet Explorer 11, which is problematic, but what you will do, of course, there is a fetch polyfill, which use behind the scenes XHR just for the Internet Explorer 11, and you can completely disable for all browsers. Okay? So now, backend. For the backend, let's start with. Any questions to the front end? I think it's, I have to say, I really like the new JavaScript, and all Java developers as well. They say we didn't knew that it's actually so simple. And if I would install Angular.js for you, you had to wait until 35,000 files are downloaded and the build process. And if I get the question from Java developer, what happens behind the scenes, this is really hard to explain. Templates are compiled and transpiled, and they say, why? I can just say, because this is the way to do, because there's no time for explanation. But the cool story is, this is absolute web standards, and whether Angular, React, or Ember, at the end of the day, all the frameworks have to use this anyway. It's not like they do something else. They use the same API I'm using right now. And the talk is just to think about you doing something, just as an option. So, counter. And let's install that. So it takes a second. Oh, is this faster even? Where is my browser? Oh, this happens with the resolution. Let's see. Any questions? So what we have here, we have the micro profile. And what I showed you today morning, something is returns a string. But what if, let's say, I would have a counter class? So what you actually could do, this class could have a string counter and or int counter and string name, and for convenience a constructor, and there will be no default constructor. And what I could do, actually, I could return the counter and say here return new counter with 21, and this would be attendees. So, and yeah, and with that, we have just micro profile, but what I use actually in all projects is, oh, sorry, I have a template. Java 8. So what actually you use today morning is a full profile application server, and it is so fast that there's actually no reason to switch to something else. So we use it on the cloud, OpenShift, whatever. If you like to use the micro edition, use it. There is no measurable difference, but the feeling is better. By the way, we have an interesting discussion in Jakarta EE mailing list about that right now. So yesterday I wrote about 30 emails, so you can track it. So they say, we all know that Java is small enough. The problem is marketing. So we have to introduce a subset, a profile, to look better, you know, because everyone believes Java is bloated. So it's okay if you like define some profiles, but I'm not interested. So we have now full thing. And so what happened now, let's see whether we can invoke. Did I start this actually? No. Run. So run it. And whatever I show you right now, I actually do in project. It's not like I have specific, you know, workshop mode. No, this is exactly the same tooling and what I do in project. So we have resources is the ping, and what I get back is JSON. So this is Java 8 spec. It means we can use the JSON object, which is old from Java 7, and this is JSON-B, JSON binding. So I could actually use that and say, this is JSON property, property, and then the name is, how is counter in Polish? What? Oh, this is perfect. So this is so we have the small thing. So we have now the Polish counter. Okay. So and there's JSON-B creator, I think. So you could actually say if something comes back, it's automatically mapped. So what we do is the data transfer objects are dead. Everything is public, no getters and setters. If you don't like JSON-P, for instance. Now what I could do is okay, but I already showed this before. We can actually say this is metered. And what happens, if I just put the annotation, and this annotation comes from microprofile. I was not interested in microprofile at all, but cool thing happened right now. Most of the Java EE application servers support microprofile as well. So I don't need, you know, crazy runtime like Swarm or whatever. I just pick Payara 5 or Whitelight 12 or whatever, and I get the microprofile built in, which I really like, because I don't have, you know, to fiddle with the environment too much. So now, and of course, I will also show you something, Kubernetes. Let's say I would like to have a health check, and this would be, I always use the health package, health check, implements health check, exactly. Oh, this was a wrong naming. In what was it? Counter health. So yeah, this should work. Health check. And now I can say, okay, what is going on? Return health check response dot named is counter. I'm up and go for it. So if you do this, now what happened is it's actually pretty cool. What we get as an added value is the following. We have now health. So see this on top level of the full runtime, not in my app. On the top level, I should see the check, but I don't see the check. So I know. Live coding. Still not, then I will have to rebuild this and run it. But what should happen? I should see in the top level this health check counter. This should be health. This is a pity. But this is boring anyway. But you would see all the health checks. Why it is needed? You should see outcome up and checks properly. Named counter up. It is up, but I would expect the name. What is lacking the name? So, oh, wait a second. This is not saved. No. Okay, but this is actually boring. What is not that boring are the metrics. And the metrics should also have here application metrics. As you can see, we have now the performance of the method ping resource of this method. And why is this needed? So if you have Kubernetes, you need actually two kinds of probes, readiness and liveness probe. The readiness probe is needed to know when the application boots, so that the load balancer will redirect actually the traffic to your pod. And we use this actually everywhere. So if we have something like OpenShift or a public or private cloud, OpenShift, public like AWS or Google Cloud, this is actually what you have to do. And with the health checks, you get it out of the box a standard endpoint. So I know it's always port number, port number / health. And this is the health check. Without that, what you will have to do is you will have to add the microservice name on top of it. So like counter or pirates or whatever. Questions about that? I will recompile it later, everything, but this is really boring. You will see this just in the health checks. So what's also interesting, let's now imagine this. We would like to see how many persons come in here. So I would like to have a metric and call it matrix control, and the name is attendee counter. So, and the attendee counter would just count the attendees. So we have something like application scoped, and then I can say next, and we would have probably atomic integer because there are not that many. This is attendees. Oh, just do lowercase. Attendees is easier to write. New atomic integer is multi-threaded, and this was the Java 12 syntax void next. And next attendees, increment and get. And now I can just do int counter and say I would like to be a go, and I can say here the name is this was counter resources ping, and I think this was a counter, right? No, counter. So this is invoked, and now go back to matrix and application, and we see here there's a business matrix counter 1, and this is actually what we always do with that. For instance, right, if we have some ordering system We would actually like to know how many orders went through and how many were rejected. So for business metrics or KPIs or whatever you call it, we use the gauge. And what you do with that, it is connected with Prometheus. So the question is, how to connect that with Prometheus? Or would you like to see Prometheus, or would you like to see communication between front-end and backend? Who is for Prometheus? And who is for backend? OK. Then backend. And probably Prometheus if we are fast enough. So what I will have to do is, to make it work, I have to say here course, cross-origin resource sharing. This is just a requirement by WebStandards. And I have, where is my course? Com Airhacks course. And this is actually my implementation is very, very simplistic. And what projects usually do, they take that, and we have Jaxeres here. And instead of make it configurable, where is it? Save it. Now I have to save it. So it is just a provider, and it just sets the headers. This is just 70 lines of code. And before make it fully configurable, we just copy the code and configure it per application. So like copy and paste is always sometimes better than create own configuration framework. So now we have course. I will just clean and build it and run it. I could actually go now here and say resources pink, and what I get back is this. So I can go here, and what we need is, I think, something like a button. Would be nice. And let's go here and create a button counter. And button. So we have nice button. And I will have to like to have the button here. We don't even need it. I could say document, query selector. We only have one button, so I don't use the ID. I just say button. On click equals, and now I can say this load counter. So we have already this here, and I can just say console log click, and now it's clicked. So and now the fun part starts. So we have fetch with that, almost. So and now I can say const response equals await. And what I get here is the response. And I can say response.json await, and what I have here is counter object. And just delete that, and I don't need that. And then I can say, OK, what's up here? Console log counter. Counter. Result, result, result. Oh, yeah, yeah. So, and now there is the small thing, right? 21 from server. And as you can see, there is no then. I just have the clean results, which are fully asynchronous. And now what I can also do, object destructuring, which is pretty cool. So what I can actually do, I can say const counter. Now, let's say, wait a second, what was the name? Your small thingins. Litznik. So we have the small Litznik from counter, and now it will automatically extract the small Litznik. So we have here, and you see 21. So now I can actually go here and say, where is the output? And the output is content, so I would like to put it here. So I go here and say this, let's say, slot equals document query selector section, a string. And now I can go here and say this section in a HTML equals, or HTML, yeah, why not? So now we can have the backticks and say, for instance, H3 $, This guy, H3.
Are you sure you want to take the section once again to
Slot, you're absolutely right.
You already have it as a section, the first line of construction.
Ah, yeah, you are. Oh, you see, I'm a little bit confused in the workshops. So, section, and we have here. So, okay, we have 2 minutes. I have questions. So we connected both in asynchronous way. We async and await, and we have templates. What I didn't show you is the new templating language. And with the new template, I actually could write the code that will look like React without any additional framework. Whatever you saw, there's actually no magic, no transpilation, nothing. And you learn it once, and you never have to relearn it again because it's the absolute, standard. And by the way, so 20 years ago, if you knew this, you were the guru. You know what it is? This is HTML6, right? So 20 years ago, if you learned this, now you know it still. So Prometheus, I could connect Prometheus directly with the app and all the charts, but you decided to have the backend communication. We had no time, 10 minutes more, I would show you service workers. It would work out of the box. Why? Because this fetch is connected with fetch event, so I could decide whether this request comes from the server or comes from the local cache. Okay, so I could even build an offline app which is never loaded from the server again. So completely offline replacement of Swing. Any questions? We have still 30 seconds and the other guys do not matter. Yes? Yes, we do it. So, and the migrations, for instance, from AngularJS to this. What happened then, we migrate part by part. And because this is not a framework, there are no conflicts. And what you need, a little bit discipline. What wouldn't work, you have no huge team of 200 developers, no one knows what happened, then forget it. But if you have a small team of motivated developers, they really love it. So this is so if you have a small dedicated team, you can absolutely do it. In large, chaotic team, no. Yeah?
If you want to use some dependencies in your project, let's say state management system or something like that.
State management, router is the common question. Router is very simple to build with hash change event. So I even created 3 minutes YouTube video. Look at this, also web standards. And if you need Redux or whatever you're referring to, you could do this. I don't like it because lots of code, but you can even use Redux with plain. I actually also record a video because I get lots of the question with that. So reducer functions, what do you mean, right? Like a stores, okay, you can absolutely do it use it with that. And what I didn't show you right now is a custom element, which would be very similar. Sorry? He asked, would this replace all the frameworks? I think the frameworks are going to be leaner and leaner, and this is going to be bigger and bigger. Because actually, behind this is Google, Mozilla, everyone. And what they already committed, this MDN, Mozilla Developer Network, is the common reference for everyone, not just for Mozilla. Google contributes, everyone contributes, and this is what I like. And now then we are in Java land again. This is how, yeah.
Do you think the same applies to TypeScript?
The question, what about TypeScript? TypeScript is great, not very good for Java developers. If Java developers see TypeScript, you get all Gang of 4 patterns inside your counter app. You get 1 button and 50 patterns. So I get really bad experience with TypeScript. They have done, RxJS, dynamic proxies, factories. They build dependency injection, and whatever they do a research project from a browser. So if you have, I would say, start without TypeScript. If you really miss typing, introduce TypeScript, but don't go too wide with all the patterns. Any other questions? Then, thank you. Was great, and see you hopefully next year.